Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Frederick Winsness, and I am with the NetHope Solutions Center, and want to welcome everyone to another NetHope Solutions Center webinar. Today, we are excited to have DocuSign and the Nature Conservancy presenting to us about improving compliance and sustainability with DocuSign system of agreement. And before we get into the topic and subject matter, I want to go over a little bit of housekeeping. So we want to make this interactive. We plan on doing a Q&A session towards the end of the hour today. And but encourage everybody to open up the chat window in WebEx, and you do that by clicking the third icon from the right on the bottom of your screen. And please line up your question in the chat window and monitor the questions that come in there, and we will do a facilitated Q&A session towards the end of the hour. We are recording this session today, and both the recording and the collateral will be posted to the NetHope Solutions Center, and I will send out the link to where that is during the conversation today, and you'll get a follow-up email that will point you in that direction as well. And you should feel free to share that with your colleagues and others that you know would be interested in this topic. And at the very end of the session today, as you end the WebEx session, you will see a webinar satisfaction poll show up in your browser, and we would certainly appreciate you spending a minute or two to answer this few questions there. That'll help the speakers today as well as us improve this webinar series over time. So thank you in advance for that. With that, I want to introduce the speakers today. We have Jessica Shane. She's the Regional Vice President, Nonprofit Clients with DocuSign. We have Chase Richmond. He's the Account Executive for Small and Medium Nonprofits at DocuSign. And we have Mariama from the Nature Conservancy. She's the Operations Manager there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica.
Great. Thank you so much, Frederick, for the introduction. As Frederick mentioned, I'm the Regional Vice President here at DocuSign for our nonprofit team. We work with clients all over the country and Canada and their global affiliates with the nonprofit arena, specifically the NGO arena. And we also have a corresponding team that helps with higher ed and one for healthcare life science. So that sort of encompasses the whole nonprofit space. But we do focus, particularly today, we're going to focus on our key area of interest, which is the nonprofit space and the NGO space. So I want to thank everyone, first of all, for joining us today. Our goal is not to give a sales pitch about DocuSign. Our goal is to really hopefully provide some education and help you reflect on times when your organization needs to come to agreement with a vendor or maybe mobilize a volunteer workforce, protect sensitive personal information, or continue with efforts to lend a hand to underserved communities. We aren't just going to discuss the topic of an e-signature over a wet signature, because that would be actually pretty boring. So hopefully we'll be a little bit more interesting. But we also want to kind of reframe your image of DocuSign as more than just the technology that helped you sign your last mortgage, and sort of open your eyes to what more we can do. On a personal note, I came to DocuSign about 6 months ago, and what really drew me was the impact mission and commitment to the nonprofit space. My husband and I had actually been talking about the fact that our kids are getting a little bit older. They've been showing some interest in doing volunteer work, which we were very proud of, and we just had been discussing what can we do beyond kind of our day-to-day. And shortly thereafter, I had the opportunity to come grow a team, a commercial team, to service the nonprofit arena. And what really excited me was the fact that our company has our impact mission, as we call it, and it's really the DNA of our company from the top down, wall to wall. Everyone here gives time, gives money, and resources on a consistent basis. So to add to that, we have the opportunity to service our nonprofit customers and really get to know the needs. So I think that's going to be a big focus of what Chase, who will be speaking after me, is going to talk about. So I'm going to kind of introduce the topic of signatures and what we call system of agreement, and then he's going to bring that conversation to life. The signature, you know, is really just writing your name down on a piece of paper. That's been the tie that binds for thousands of years. If you think about it, governments have been formed with the help of somebody signing their signature on a piece of paper. A signature can be a souvenir, acting as proof that you met someone famous. You can buy a house with a signature. You can give permission for your kids to go on a field trip. You can even agree to transfer money from your bank account to someone else's. When I was a kid, I actually had my dad sign a contract that he was going to buy me a car when I turned 16. As it turns out, this was not a legally binding contract, and I had to buy my own car. But I was well aware at a young age that a signature was very important in terms of coming into agreement with another party. Sometimes, however, two parties coming to agreement can't be in the same place at the same time. Sometimes the pieces of paper get lost, misplaced. Fire can take away, or other natural disasters can take away files stashed away in an office. And believe it or not, there's such a thing as forgery, and people actually write other people's names on documents. With the growing presence of technology in our lives, we can connect people across borders, in separate states, in separate countries, all on a smartphone or another device. But this can make us vulnerable in an increasingly connected world. In the year 2000, the eSign Act, which the full name was the Electronic Signatures in Global and National Commerce Act, was signed into law by President Clinton and passed by Congress. The law ensures the legally binding power and validity of e-signatures. 3 years after that, DocuSign was founded. Today, more than 100 million users in 188 countries complete DocuSigns via DocuSign within an hour of receiving it. Signatures carry an audit trail and strict validation that can hold up in a court of law. We drastically reduce paper consumption, carbon emissions, and save precious time. In a second, I'm going to pass the controls over to Chase Richmond, who is on my nonprofit team here at DocuSign. As he's talking, I want you to think about when you and your organization have needed to secure vendors, solicit donor funds, obtain permission, or secure a waiver. You'll also hear from one of our customers, the Nature Conservancy, to learn more about some common problems that we can address from the customer's perspective. And now, as I pass it on to Chase, I want to give a special thanks to NetHope. Thanks for providing this venue for us to speak to your members. I think it's really important to start the conversations. I think the mission of bringing technology into the missions that NGOs around the world face is going to be exponentially important in the coming years. So thank you so much for everything that you do. I'm humbled that we can be a part of this in a small way. So Chase, I'm going to pass it on to you to talk about the system of agreement and do a demonstration of DocuSign.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. All right, so I'm going to kick it off by talking a little bit about the DocuSign Impact Program. As Jessica mentioned, this really is the foundation of our organization, and as employees here, something that we live every day. With DocuSign Impact, our commitment is to really leverage the power of the people here at our organization, as well as our products and profit for good, and to really give back to the global communities where our employees and all our customers live and work. We do that by volunteering our time. Our organization provides volunteer time off days for all our employees. We coordinate events around the globe in all of our different locations that we work in, and we come together to give back to the community and work with nonprofit organizations locally. Beyond that, our product has the ability to help organizations who are doing good improve their processes and further drive their mission. So we offer significant discounting to nonprofit organizations with a specific focus on helping them enable their employees to use their time better and their funds better. Apart from that, our DocuSign Impact Foundation matches employee donations to nonprofit organizations around the globe, so allowing us to leverage our profits to also try our best to do more good. As I mentioned, our product itself has the ability to create great impact with the organizations that leverage it. This can be represented in the amount of time saved by using a more streamlined process, allowing your employees to further devote that time to your mission. to save money and make things easier across the organization and allow people to sign off on things wherever they're at globally, so to save time and make that process easier for all parties involved. Additionally, as you can imagine at DocuSign, our greatest enemy is paper. Our goal here is to get rid of the world of paper and to enable people to go green across the board. When you look at the number of customers leveraging DocuSign worldwide and the amount of DocuSign envelopes that are sent out every day, it amounts to a great number of paper that's been saved thus far, over 10 billion pieces of paper, which can be represented in a number of different ways in environmental impact. So as you think about your organization's green initiatives, DocuSign can play a crucial role in making that process easier and achieving those goals more quickly. At DocuSign, we think of the signature process as a lot more than just the simple act of signing off on a document. Every organization has a large system around the agreement, whether they know it or not. With that in mind, there's multiple steps required to get an agreement signed off on. It takes time to prepare the document, fill out the unique information inside of it. The physical act of signing off on it can be very difficult when you're working with people in different locations. And there are events that take place after the signature as well. We have to act on the agreement and the contents of it, as well as manage that completed document and store it securely. The legacy process that organizations use today has many problems every step along the way. It takes time to fill in an agreement using information you've already got in other systems. From there, manually routing that document from person to person through a workflow and signing off on documents through email or paper is a time-consuming process. From there, once you've got a signed off on document, it takes time to get that information extracted and back where it needs to go. And there are difficulties and frustrations along the way. It can be hard for people to find a printer or scanner. Maybe the information is hard to access, and it can take a lot of time to get these documents completed end-to-end. With that in mind, the status quo really does have a lot of cost associated with it. We've done studies that show that every agreement signed through DocuSign, on average, can save an organization $36. There's a huge loss in staff time, and projects can become delayed waiting for this process to be completed. And it's not a great experience having to go through this process in a manual fashion. It can take time, and it makes it hard for everyone involved. Beyond that, there's a huge risk from a legality standpoint and a compliance standpoint with a manual paper-driven process, whether it's locating a completed document for an audit or ensuring that you have everything in place prior to beginning a project. Standardization in a digital manner can prevent risk and prevent legal problems around document signing as well. DocuSign can be used in many ways. The way you're probably most familiar with is receiving an email that's going to have you sign off on a document on your computer. But additionally, we offer mobile signing from any device around the globe, as well as in-person signing, which can be quite handy for volunteer use cases or experiences where you're having things signed in person today. Additionally, we've got a fantastic API and open integration framework that allows you to embed DocuSign in your application or in your website to make a seamless process that's really built into your current workflow. DocuSign can be used in many ways, beyond just the standard signature. It can be used to collect information, whether that's a volunteer sign-up form or a medical release. It can be used for internal approvals, for purchase orders or partner contracts. It can also be used as a system to notify employees or managers or other counterparts of any sort of document that needs to get routed around from person to person. It can also be handy for acknowledgments. Parental consent forms, waivers, are commonly utilized by the nonprofit organizations that I talk to every day. There's opportunity to leverage DocuSign in virtually every department around the organization. Typically, organizations come to us with one or two clear use cases in mind that they know they need DocuSign for. But with that in mind, there are many different ways to leverage DocuSign. And most organizations find that once they have experience implementing it in that clear use case they came to us for, there are many different opportunities to bring it on board and drive further value across the organization. With that in mind, I'm going to kick off a quick demonstration showing you what it looks like to upload a document into DocuSign's platform, send it out for signature. Here we have DocuSign's web console, and this is what you're going to see when you sign into our platform. You'll get a quick snapshot of anything that you might need to sign, if you're an internal counter signature perhaps, anything you're waiting on, or anything you've designated to expire soon. When it comes time to kick off an agreement, generally you'll start with this yellow New button, and in this case, we're going to send an envelope from scratch. There are a few core components to what we call an envelope. First and foremost are the documents that you're sending for signature. I'm going to upload one off of my desktop here. In this case, I'm going to bring in a standard NDA form. This is a Word document. You can virtually upload any format document, whether it's Excel, PDF, Word, whatever it may be. You'll notice that you can continue uploading additional documents, and that's why we refer to this as an envelope. You can create a streamlined packet of multiple documents and get them all signed off in one workflow. They can be pulled in from your computer or from any cloud provider. Once you have the documents that are to be signed, the next step is creating the recipient workflow. In this NDA, if we take a quick look at it, there's two parties, the recipient of the confidential information and a discloser. With that in mind, I'm going to set a signing order. Person number one, we'll call them Charles Customer. They're going to be signer one. So I'm going to put their name and email address in this field here. Signer two is going to be an internal counter signature, the discloser. We'll call them Mark Manager. And once we have their names and email in, we are ready to go. But for good measure, I'm going to add a third recipient here, and we'll add my legal team. I actually don't need them to sign the document. They're simply going to receive a copy. You can have as many people as necessary in the workflow, and you can have as many people receive copies as needed. The final step on this envelope creation screen is customizing the email that your recipient will receive. We can customize the subject and the body of the message as well. From there, there's some additional options we can set up that can be quite handy. One allows your recipients to change the signer on their end rather than reaching back out to me to void the document and I resend it to the appropriate person. We have functionality around marking up or editing a document, and you have the ability to set up automatic reminders that after X amount of time, they get a reminder as frequently as you'd like, and it will resurface at the top of your email inbox. One great call out here is the ability to create a custom branding profile. It's a very simple process where you upload your own logo and choose a color scheme. And this will personalize the email and the signing process to really look and feel like it's coming from your organization rather than DocuSign. And we'll look at that when we sign this. Now that we've got our envelope set up, the next step is simply tagging the document with where we need it signed and interacted with. If we had multiple pages, we could scroll through this in a simple PDF packet style. And when it comes time to set this up, it's really as simple as selecting which recipient we're setting up tags for and dragging and dropping tags on top of the document. In this case, we have a signature block, a date, and a name, and that's all there is to it. We can align these to one side. And if I go up here and change to the other recipient, you'll notice the color changes as well. So it's easy to tell who we're setting up tags for. We have a variety of other fields as well, apart from just the standard signature box. DocuSign has the ability to collect text. You can resize these fields. They can be required or optional. A required field needs to be filled out before the recipient can submit the document, so you no longer get documents back that are incomplete. Additionally, checkboxes, drop-down menus, radio buttons allow you to create full-fledged documents, whatever their contents may be. It could be an application form or a rather complex packet collecting information, and DocuSign has functionality to make that easy and ensure that you're getting back documents that are complete and in good order. We have functionality around collecting payments, requiring an attachment from your recipient, or other information as well. So virtually any use case can be easily set up within our platform. I'm going to go ahead and hit send here. And DocuSign is going to take me to my Manage tab. Here I can view all the documents that I've sent from my account, and I can see exactly where they're at in the process. In this case, we can see when I sent it, who we're waiting on, and who's left in the workflow. I could correct the document if I had made an error, and you'll notice the manual resend button to resurface it in their inbox as frequently as you'd like. If I head over to my email inbox here, we'll see the document I sent and the subject I set up, as well as the body of the email here. You'll also notice the branding profile that I set up. Here's the logo I uploaded and the colors that I chose. The document itself is not embedded in this email. It's simply a link to our secure server, which is going to open in a browser tab. Your recipient does not need a DocuSign account or any specific application or special software to sign off on this. It can be done on any device as long as it has a web browser. Over half the documents that are sent through DocuSign are signed on mobile devices. I'm going to agree to sign off on this electronically. And all I have to do on this document is sign here. If I were to try and hit finish, it's going to direct me to the required field and not let me complete it until it's done. To apply my signature, I can either sign with a fingertip on a touchscreen device, or I can select from a predetermined style and adopt this as my legally binding signature. I also have the option to upload my actual signature. So as the recipient here, that's all I had to do. I will hit finish. I could download or print from there. If we go back to DocuSign and hit refresh, we can see here that it's been signed by Charles Customer. We're now waiting on the second signer, Mark Manager. So very quickly, I'm going to pop in as that internal counter signature and complete the document. Assuming I do this all the time, this should be a breeze. Hit finish, and our document's now been completed. By default, all parties in the workflow will get a copy sent to them via email. Here's the PDF attachment for their records. And now, if we hit refresh in DocuSign, my document's stored securely in my account. I can always download it or print it. We have integrations with virtually every other storage provider to have this document sent there as well. And we can see all the different events around the signature. If we click more and we go to history, here we can see the legally binding audit trail for every event around this document signature. When it was viewed, when it was opened, by who, at what IP address, even the location it was signed in if their browser allows for it. All of this can be downloaded as what we call the certificate of completion. It's a nice clean PDF document that proves the legality of the signature and is all you need to uphold it. Compared to a classic wet signature, this audit trail provides a lot more clarity around the events that took place, and this is stored securely in your account with that document. So a lot of peace of mind that you have all the proof you need to uphold any signature through this account. All of your completed documents will be stored in your Manage tab. You can create folders to organize them, and we have a deep set of controls over who you give access to in your organization to view these documents and what they have visibility into. For instance, if you add your HR team and want to ensure that only they can view the offer letters being signed, it's easy to set up a permission profile for them specifically. A big piece of the functionality we offer is the ability to take that entire process we just went through and turn it into a repeatable and reusable DocuSign template. Essentially, it allows you to set up any standardized document one time and to save it in a library to where you can have all your standardized documents pre-built, shared across your organization to really save time on the preparation phase of creating your document. I could have an NDA template that's pre-built, have my document uploaded, and when it comes time to use it, all I have to do is enter the name and email of my recipients and hit send. What we've gone through here is the DocuSign Web Console. We also have integrations with virtually every software under the sun. As I mentioned, we've got an open API, and we have an open integration framework, And with that in mind, we've worked with countless partners to build out robust integrations to allow you to send documents out of other platforms and to integrate the information to and from their systems. We offer a reporting functionality to schedule reports and get a great pulse on where all the different agreements in your organization are at. And ultimately, a full suite of different features to manage the process from end to end. All right. Thanks for walking through that with me. At this point, I'm going to kick it over to Jessica to introduce our special guest, Mari, from the Nature Conservancy, and to ask her some questions around how they leverage DocuSign today.
Thanks, Chase. That was great. I always like watching a demo of my own product because it never ceases to impress me, so thank you for that. So Mari, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you great. So I just have a few questions for you. First of all, can you just describe to the audience how the Nature Conservancy uses DocuSign at a high level?
Yeah, so at the moment, most of our users are comprised of our operations managers, contract managers, some of our HR staff, and some of our event staff. And at the moment, the California chapter is I think we are one of the first ones to use DocuSign, and there might be some other chapters, but we're not yet using it as an entire organization. But here in California, we've really started using it in everything we can. And most of the time, we are working with contracts or grant agreements, all the supporting documents. We are using it for some of our new hire paperwork, our waivers for events. So those are perhaps right now the main uses.
Okay, great. Yeah, there's a lot of different departments, as Mari alluded to, that can benefit from the use of DocuSign, and waivers are a big use case for us, as well as volunteer forms. So I'm glad that you guys are taking advantage of that. Obviously, Nature Conservancy, I would imagine that green initiatives are a big win. We hear a lot about this from clients in our nonprofit space, not only because green initiatives obviously are good for the environment, but they're also financially beneficial. Can you tell me a little bit about how DocuSign helps with your green initiative?
Yeah, so in our California offices, we've all moved in the last couple of years. We started moving towards hoteling and reducing our office footprint, and at the same time, we're trying to go as much paperless as possible. And that's been a huge, huge overtaking and undertaking of making sure that we're only keeping what is absolutely necessary. And DocuSign has been really instrumental on that. Because now we can send out any kind of staff changes or contracts just electronically, and it's automatically stored in Salesforce, which we use for contract tracking. And so we've been able to really reduce the amount of space that we need and mailing costs, and in general, just printing costs and staff time. We've gone from about, in San Francisco alone, we've gone from about 21,000 square feet to 16,000 square feet. We have about 110 people that work in this office. And so this has been really helpful in making that change.
Yeah, it's good to hear. Thank you for expanding upon that. So we've got the kind of green initiative, ease of use for onboarding and HR and volunteers and waivers. What about compliance? What sort of risk mitigation do you experience by putting this in the cloud, and how has DocuSign helped with compliance?
Well, initially, actually, one of the main reasons why we started using DocuSign was because with our contracts, one of the supporting documents is a conflict of interest form that all nonprofits need to use. And we had a huge problem with vendors that we were working with sending it back with incorrect information, or it was filled incorrectly. And of course, we are talking about, you know, being geographically dispersed. We're not first of all, our own staff is not in the same space or same office most of the time, but we're working with vendors all across the state. And so that was one of the main reasons why we initially started using it. And that nowadays we almost never have to send back these conflict of interest forms, because it's always, we can control what they fill out and what are the required fields, and we can make sure that all the information that we need is there. And that, of course, reduces the risk of putting our 501c3 status at risk. And so that has been a peace of mind for our legal department. When also one of the main things with compliance was that when we would have audits, we would often have to track down and start hunting down the final executed documents. We might have stored the document with a vendor signature, but then the counter signature may have been missing quite often. And so in a couple of our last audits, there were a lot of findings that this was a problem. And so now when we can send the final contract through Salesforce, through the Salesforce sync directly, and then once it's signed, it automatically uploads into the contract record. So now our operations managers don't have to remember to follow up. They don't have to keep emailing everyone who needs to sign it, and they don't have to remember to upload it manually. So that really has helped with our compliance. Also, we can make sure that there's no abuse of backdating when someone has forgotten to sign a contract in order to start the work. So there's a lot of different examples that we've seen improvement on.
Yeah, and that's, you know, a pretty common piece of feedback that we get is reducing the existence of what we call NGO documents, which is not in good order. And there can be a lot of back and forth if there's a signature or some initials missing. So I'm glad that we could help out with that. It makes it a lot easier and really does protect you. So in general, and this is sort of a two-part question, number one, what advice would you have for any of your peers in your field looking at DocuSign or really any technology to meet internal initiatives? And kind of the second part of that is, how does this help you do more for the mission?
Yeah, I would say that paying attention to or analyze the time that it takes for any staff person who is working with contracts or any kind of documents. How much time does it take to create the document and then track down the signatures, mail them around, or print and fax? That for us was one big finding. I have an example. We did a sort of a very quick analysis of if we have 6 operations managers, and each of them, let's say that we all have one contract a week, which is kind of rare. Most of the time, it could be one contract a day that we're working on. But the amount of time savings, we could go from 1 hour a week to 5 minutes a week in spending with a specific document, and that alone can translate to savings of something like $12,000 a year per person, per person. And so it really it's a huge savings in cost, staff time cost, and because we're not spending as much time tracking the signatures manually, everybody can work a lot more on supporting our program staff in other more conservation-related functions and project management. And so that it really, when you look at it that way, the cost of using this tool is much lower than the savings that we're actually making.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I know that for a lot of our prospective customers, before they engage in DocuSign, it's sort of hard to really understand the benefit of the soft cost savings and the time savings. But it really is truly something that's going to free up a lot of time to do more important things and then also be able to streamline staff. So that's sort of all I had for you in terms of questions, Mari. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the greater audience?
I mean, I think the one last thing is the same way that we started using DocuSign is looking at the biggest challenges that you have with contracts or other compliance with standard operating procedures, and then figuring out how DocuSign could help with that. We're still working on some new initiatives that we can utilize it, and it's quite exciting to see how much time it can save.
Yeah, good. I love to hear that. Well, thank you, Mari, so much for sharing your personal and your organization's story with the rest of the audience. I really, really appreciate it. And Frederick, I'll kick it back to you, but I just wanted to close out kind of by saying that we do offer pretty significant discounts, obviously, for nonprofits, and then NetHope members get additional discounts, 50% to 100% on professional services and training, because we want to make sure that you are able to adopt and utilize DocuSign to its fullest and see kind of the benefits that Mari was discussing, and hopefully we can expand it throughout the NetHope community. So, Frederick, I think that's all that we have, and I will let you wrap up with some Q&A.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, both Jessica, Chase, and Mari. Super interesting information, hopefully quite actionable with our audience here today. I would encourage everybody to continue putting your questions in the chat window, but what I'll do, I'll repeat them back for response from the top. So the first one that came in was if an organization is manually based today or based on wet signatures, what are some of the initial considerations that needs to be made in order to get on the path to utilizing the platform?
Yeah, this is Chase. So I think that the biggest things to consider, apart from knowing that DocuSign's versatile and can work for virtually any use case, is trying to picture an ideal solution in terms of the other systems that you can leverage with DocuSign, what parties are involved, and how we can streamline that process end to end. So looking at the different use cases that are taking the most time, kind of getting an understanding of what systems that those are utilizing today, and then just having a conversation with someone from our team here who is a product expert from DocuSign, but also a process expert, someone that has implemented DocuSign and seen the benefits of it for many organizations. We can help kind of guide and recommend best practice for what it might look like from an implementation side and what that end goal might be. But the best thing to note is that we have a phenomenal adoption consulting team. We provide training and onboarding that's one-on-one and consultative. So we work hand in hand with you to implement these processes and really make sure it's easy to get DocuSign up and running.
Excellent. Sorry, I had a little trouble coming off of mute there. The next question that came in was around training, and you addressed part of it, but the question reads, do you have training resources available, for instance, videos, etc.? Would there both be an admin role and an end user role for different training needs?
Yeah, great question. So we've got a huge focus on customer success. I think that's really what sets us apart from a lot of other software that can be hard to adopt and really drive across the organization. So training is twofold. There's the admin side, where you've got your one-on-one consultation, you're building out your use cases, you're getting things up and running. And then there's, of course, getting your end users comfortable with the software as well. So we have what's called Docusign University, which is open to all of your users, and it provides self-guided learning paths, webinars around the clock, as well as video training in a learning path for whatever you're trying to accomplish. So generally, when you become a customer, you kick off that adoption consulting program for your admins, and then once things are up and running, you get all of your users on the Docusign University to learn their side of things.
Thank you very much. Well, the third question that came in was around the message that you send out around the documents. So when you send out those messages, are you allowed to put URLs right inside of those messages?
Yeah, absolutely. You can embed URLs in text fields within the document itself, or in just the email message they receive, you can include URLs.
Fantastic. I'm assuming that the use for that could be to send people to explanatory internal intranet links and what have you. So that's terrific. So the next one is a little lengthy question, a little bit multifaceted, but it has to do with use of DocuSign in a disconnected fashion. Thinking about a use case where a field worker is to fill out an assessment form filled out on a mobile device with no internet, and the document is sent back when the internet becomes available. Also, the data from that form, could that be tied into a database or things like Microsoft Dynamics or Azure DB or something like that?
Great question. So we have a robust mobile app that allows for offline signing. Essentially, you download the DocuSign template to be filled out locally to the device. You can fill it out as many times as you need, and then right when the device connects back to the web, it's going to upload those to your DocuSign account. So very commonly used field use case and quite handy. In terms of connecting it to a database, we've got integrations with Dynamics. You can absolutely connect it with an Azure database. It would require a little bit of customization to have a offline and database connected use case, but it's definitely possible. But at its core, you can absolutely merge data in from a Dynamics record, for instance. Maybe you've got a template where you have a record in Dynamics and you've got a recipient's address and phone number and some information about them. You can use that to populate a kind of dynamically generated contract. So a lot of opportunity around that, and happy to have a conversation a little more in depth specific to the ideal use case.
Fantastic. It sounds like you were talking about Salesforce integration also. It sounds like you have multiple options of integrating various systems. There was a question from Mari. How long did it take TNC to fully integrate DocuSign in your process flows? And did you have any initial training needs?
Yeah, so initially we started with our operations managers. So I would say that when we started using it with our contracts, the initial training and setup probably happened over, I'm estimating, over a month or two. And very quickly, we had a couple of people who were initially trained, and then they shared their knowledge with other contract managers, and now we said that whenever we have new people coming in, that's part of our onboarding is the training with DocuSign and with the Salesforce Sync. And so I think it was a pretty painless process.
Excellent. There was a follow-up question to that, and the question was, does TNC have an enterprise agreement, or are you focused on individual departments and you know, a smaller part of your organization using DocuSign?
So right now, as far as I know, California is one of the only chapters, and I can actually maybe, I don't know, Jessica, if you have more information on that, because each of our state chapters kind of functions as its own entity. And so even though we have some overarching services through our headquarters, of course, but right now we are one of the first ones to have adopted DocuSign. And there's perhaps more to come with the global offering this as a tool, but I'm not part of that work group.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure off the top of my head if the Nature Conservancy has other branches using it. It's pretty common in the nonprofit space to have each individual branch sort of have their own user agreement and license. That is something we would like to figure out an easier way for people to have more enterprise level agreements, as they often do with Salesforce and ERP systems. But the one thing I would note is there's a difference between a commercial agreement and just an individual web user. And so a lot of times organizations, people will kind of, pick up an individual web license just to use for a couple of one-off documents. And I would say that if you have several people with individual web licenses, it's worth looking at consolidating into a commercial plan, because then you can lock down your email domain and ensure that any sort of documents associated with those are tied to the company and not the individual. So it certainly is possible for individual branches of a larger enterprise level nonprofit to purchase their own DocuSign instance. And then, obviously you can do it the other way too. So I think it's one of those things where you don't necessarily want to wait for a headquarters to purchase it, but you want to loop them in, obviously, and make sure that they don't have something you could take advantage of. So hopefully that answers the question.
Excellent. I encourage people to keep on sending the questions in. That's super helpful, and we'll keep the conversation going as long as there are questions coming. The next question was, are there any specific concerns you have seen across the humanitarian sector in implementing DocuSign as compared to the private or commercial sector?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there are specific concerns. It's definitely case by case. Of course, you want to evaluate all the different conditions and environments that potential field workers would be working within, creating a standardized training process for volunteers. I think a lot of it comes down to just building a good adoption plan and working with our teams to ensure that it's set up in a way that's easy to scale across the organization and ensure that the technology is not a bottleneck in high pressure situations. So the goal, of course, is to use DocuSign to make those processes easier, faster, and smoother. So I think it's definitely case by case. I wouldn't say there's any sort of sweeping concerns, and those are things we work with you to address and kind of tackle head on.
One thing I'd actually piggyback on that is, and it wouldn't be a concern, but more of a benefit that especially parlays into the nonprofit world, is the fact that we are a global company. And from like a GDPR perspective and a security perspective, and having data warehouses in several locations around the world, those are, concerns of the for-profit world and in the commercial world that should also be, concerns in the nonprofit space. And I know with so many global organizations, that's something that we can handle.
Yeah, there was a kind of a follow-up question to that just came in. Do all countries or governments in the world recognize documents signed by DocuSign, or are there any further recognition challenges along those lines?
Yeah, we have offices in, I believe, 14 countries currently, and we operate on a global scale, and it is accepted virtually worldwide. Almost in every country across the globe. We've got a phenomenal portal on our website for our legality guide. You can actually from a drop-down menu, select any country and find out if there's any sort of specifics or caveats, but we have people using DocuSign in virtually every country around the world successfully.
If you can put a link to that page in the chat window, that might be very useful for people to look at now or when they're looking at the recording later on. Yeah,
I will do so, but also I'll include what we call our Trust Center. As you can imagine, data security is our #1 concern, working with all of the regulated industries we do. So we've got a great portal that shows all of the security, certification, and audits in place to ensure your data is secure. So I'll include both those links in the chat window here.
That would be great, and I'll try to put that into the webinar posting on the Solutions Center as well, and maybe also in the follow-up mail that goes out to everybody. That'd be super helpful. We have one other outstanding question. That is, where or in what country location are the envelopes or documents stored, and how long will they be kept? Is there a time span limit? can the documents easily be extracted, exported, and identified, for instance, when people stop using DocuSign?
All great questions. So we own and manage all of our own data centers. We have them all around the world. So depending on your location, we can provision them to the server that makes the most sense. By default, all of your data is secured in DocuSign as long as you're a customer, unlimited storage. You can set retention policies if there are requirements outside of just keeping it indefinitely. And we offer a tool called Docusign Retrieve, which allows for mass downloading and exporting and really customizing your naming conventions and file outputs and all of that. So it becomes very easy to extract information, either scheduling it to happen automatically at a regular interval, or just when you leave DocuSign, having it all exported en masse.
Fantastic. That certainly answers that question. So those were the questions that came in. I don't know if Jessica, Chase, or Mari, you have any closing comments that you may want to share?
So this is Jessica. I don't particularly have any closing comments except for the fact that we're here if anybody has questions. If you're an existing customer and would like to have further, Q&As and kind of build upon your account, we have a dedicated team, and we are really focused on growing the space. So our information will be provided at the end of this, and we are out of the Seattle, Washington office, but we service customers, like I said, all throughout the U.S. and Canada and their global affiliates. So thank you so much, Frederick, for facilitating this, and we really appreciate the opportunity to partner with NetHope. So that would be all.
Well, thank you very much, and I posted the links both to our NetHope Solutions Center partner profile page, the DocuSign link there, as well as for those in the audience that are NetHope members, a link to find out more about the specific technology discounts that you offer to NetHope members, and we certainly appreciate your support there. So with that, I want to thank Jessica, Chase, and Mari again for great content today, and for the audience for excellent interaction and super questions. And hopefully this has been useful for everyone. And remind you to maybe take a minute or two to answer the webinar satisfaction poll. That would be greatly appreciated. So, stay in touch. Keep an eye on the NetHope Solutions Center events listing for upcoming webinars. With that, I wish everybody a great rest of your day, and we'll be back in touch soon. Take care, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.